Welcome to our talk on the power of collaboration. Today isn't about collaboration as a buzzword. It's about what really happens when strong, creative partnerships work well under pressure. It's about how good ideas hold up and how different disciplines work well with each other. So my name's Ellie Walton. I'm a journalist at Arc Magazine. And I am joined with Maida Hot from Equation, Lighting Design Studio, and Shane Kelly from architectural studio TP Bennett. So today's talk will be roughly 45 minutes long, with the first 30 minutes with me moderating, and then the last 15 minutes the floor will be open to you guys. So if you have any questions during this process, make sure to hold on to them and we'll get round to you later. Okay, so let's begin. So what I wanted to be able to start off with is defining what good collaboration is. So Maida, when good collaboration is working well, what is it that's happening beneath it?
I think the basis for good collaboration is good communications and listening to each other, and then sort of developing the empathy. Because if we don't understand where each other are coming from, it's very hard to collaborate, because you may be pulling and pushing in a different direction. So the communicating would be key. And I think the other basis of the good communication is a trust and adaptability. So I think those ingredients are really essential for two companies or multiple companies to collaborate. It's sort of old school parts, yeah.
Empathy is an interesting word that you use. Could you perhaps give an example of what that is in practice?
I think that's, in sort of my experience, it's usually to do with understanding when somebody's coming up to the deadline or some tricky situation, or I suppose just understanding what the other side or other sort of teams are going through, and really being empathetic about the sort of wanting to help, and not in a way that like just being a helper, but being more pragmatic and constructive about what we offer, for example. So that's like just sort of sitting in each other's chairs and being understanding of that.
How about you, Shane? Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think teamwork, everyone being aligned to a single vision, everybody understanding, what the aim of the project is, what's important to the client. Obviously a project team is made up of a wider range of consultants, a lot of the time from many different organizations. But a project team really trumps that in terms of delivering a great project. You really have to align, have that understanding of everyone's role, not be afraid to have difficult conversations, have an open dialogue, and the element of trust that Maida raised, I think, is probably the most important thing.
Just to really understand what you mean, when you say, so what are an example of where you would need empathy and understanding? What's something you could be struggling, perhaps from a lighting designer perspective, that Shane can then help with?
I think lots of times in a project we're working on, timescales are quite tight. And even though at the beginning it looks like a lot of time, we all work for a client, and that's making client happy is our prerogative. For all of us, and delivering a project based on a brief. So over the time, sometimes it could be program aspects being crammed a little bit, and then we all have to pull together to deliver things like our designs within the time frames. At the same time, we can never give up on the quality, for example. It's about creativity is a key. We are engaged to provide creative designs and provide something that will make a difference and be unique. So none of it can be compromised. So I suppose sort of working together and understanding how we can help each other sort of do that is very important, and having those open dialogues in how, in the sort of I suppose challenging environments, we can all overcome that without being sort of in any way antagonistic, but just really pull together, if you like.
And Shane, when we were talking on our brief the other day, you mentioned about the core principles of collaboration, and I just wondered if you could define or the principles that tend to underpin what strong collaboration is, and this could be something that can be applied across disciplines, not just your own.
Right, reliability. I said it before, the ability to have direct conversations. I think Maida's right. The projects that we work on are increasingly complex. They're also increasingly fast. So there isn't a lot of time to waste, and no one wants to waste time. Everyone wants to focus on getting the best product, pushing boundaries. So I think alignment between consultants is really, really important to make sure that everyone is coming at it from the same point of view. To make sure, it is, as someone said before, not sexy, but it's not. It is about setting a project up right. It's about having the right engagement with each other. It's about being together. I think really helps if you can in the early stages of a project. It's co-creation. A good idea can come from anywhere on the project team, so it's about low ego. I think quality is really important. Quality of output, quality of client service, and quality of input into the collaboration itself. So, making sure fees are structured right, that you are providing the right resource for the type of project that it is, showing up, consultants actually being there for each other, which is, I think, very much the empathy point of view. Very important for us as architects. We are the lead consultant, which puts a lot of responsibility, contractual responsibility on us. So we are really conscious that we need great collaboration, great output, great quality, great engagement, and that gives us the confidence that we're working with the right people. It gives clients the confidence, but most of all, it protects the team.
You mentioned working with different kinds of consultants, and so when you're in a project, collaboration doesn't just matter between you as an architect and a light designer. There's many players within a project, different stakeholders across the client, the wider design team. So where does collaboration matter the most, and where does it tend to become difficult in a project?
It's a multifaceted sort of answer. Oh, sorry, it's a multifaceted answer to the question, and I suppose it becomes difficult. I would say that when there is changes mentioned that it's about right resourcing, understanding the brief, setting up the project right. All those basics, they're a bit mundane, but they matter so much. And if that's not sort of set up properly, things could go wrong potentially. Because if everybody in a team has to pull together, for example, services consultants, acoustics, IT, AV, all of those impact not only sort of architecture, which is sort of straightforward, but also lighting design. And if those are not aligned at the beginning, we are missing the Lego bricks in our building our design, because everything is a part of a brief. And if those aspects are not aligned, we could be sort of suffering in a way, and it could be that good quality Shane just mentioned could be sort of slightly compromised, which sort of defeats the point of collaboration and working together as a team. So I think that that sort of, I don't know whether
Yeah.
sort of I got
In
the
terms,
answer
you
that you were
mentioned
looking for.
unalignment. So what is it that causes unalignment in these situations?
Sort of go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, I think, you know, if we go back to what we spoke about originally, if the project is set up right from the outset, and the team is communicating properly, there shouldn't really. I mean, of course, there's difficult moments on a project. There's complexities on site. There's client change. You know, there's value engineering. But it all comes back to the basics. It all comes back to communication, listening to each other, understanding everyone's viewpoint. Because if you need to undertake value engineering, it is actually pain that the whole team should go through. It shouldn't fall on anyone's shoulders. The focus should be getting the best result for a client. So how do we achieve it? So I think, you know, there's opportunities for conflict all over projects. But as long as you've got those good relationships, those good connections, good personal relationships, consistency of team, I think is a huge one. Some of the projects we work on can go for 8 or 9 years, and consistency of team can be a real challenge, you know, because, you know, not everyone stays in the same job forever. So transfer of knowledge, transfer of information, when someone might move team, ideally no changes, you know, particularly if the personalities don't move organisation, to retain that knowledge on the project team. But again, it really comes down to great planning, great resource, a real understanding of the complexity of the project. I think being aligned also in terms of the way, the spirit of the organisation. So I know that's one thing why we work well together, is there is an absolute focus on quality, getting the job right, and learning lessons from previous projects, and making sure that that we're taking that continual knowledge from, you know, years of experience of working together.
Is there a previous lesson you can think of yourself where you remember where collaboration really worked and pulled that together?
Well, I mean, it's daily. I mean, anyone that works in this sector knows that it's the only way you get a job done. No project is created by any single hand, and if you can get to that understanding of that very quickly in your career, and I think like low ego is absolutely a great starting point. Understanding the value that others can add is a massive step on that journey. You know, there was, when Maida and I first met, which was probably over 20 years ago, we were both working for different organisations. It was quite unusual to have a specialist lighting designer on your project. You would often have an MEP consultant doing the lighting on the whole thing. Obviously, thankfully, we live in a different world now, and the value of specialist lighting design to any project has changed, and it's unusual now not to have one. So that, I think, demonstrates a part of the point here is the projects, the aspirations, the expectations, the complexity is so much bigger that it can't be delivered by a single consultant. So you have to have a team mindset.
So would you say that collaboration matters the most when projects tend to get more complex then? And as we were saying, we were talking on the brief a couple of weeks ago, and you were saying, as I was saying earlier, there can be multiple actors and players within a project, and you said it's good to work with the same people and people that you know, but surely that can't happen every time. There'll be new people brought on, and has that changed as well over the years? Have we got more and more stakeholders, there's more people getting involved, does that make the situation more complex?
I would say that there are some things that haven't changed and some things that have changed a lot in the last 10 years. I think what haven't changed is that strong leadership and a good leadership within the team, and the sort of growing the talent and that collaborative approach from inside of the companies, like having that culture that, you know, like you're friends with everybody. It doesn't matter whether they're assistant or they're directors. You create relationships. You make friends at the beginning of the project, because times might get tough, might not, but that's the point is that everybody should embrace that as their a baby, if you like, for Project Life. So that hasn't changed. I think that needs to be strengthened more and more, because people are less meeting each other, doing more teams, and I suppose it's less in-person meetings, less of the going down to pub or for a drink or things like that. It's just, you know, the way we live. It's more about the electronics way of communication. But so those you know, those are aspects that everybody is dealing with in a private life as well. However, the complexities from project side came with a lot of mundane things like regulatory aspects, but also more open conversation about how design influences people, and more focusing on neurodiversity requirements, on inclusion, on longevity, sustainability. Not that that hasn't been in the last couple of decades an issue, but it's more and more about recycling and the circular economy. And all of those things are brought into the projects, adding not the complexity in terms of being negative, it's all positive. But when you are talking about the timescales, which remain the same, and all these concerns, everybody has to build within their teams good expertise, and also know what others bring to the table, to really sort of draw the best from everyone, to basically meet all those requirements that today's so interiors would be expected to fulfill.
Yeah, I think there's an increasing importance now, I think, in terms of that project set up, to get your entire project team on board as early as you can in the process, for all of the reasons that Maida just mentioned. The scope of the project, the complexity of the project, the range of stakeholders, the range of space typologies. You know, in a single large workplace headquarter, you have well-being spaces, you have hospitality spaces, there'll be workspace, there might be high-performing technical AV spaces. So you need to be working together to establish the brief. Everyone needs to be listening to what's important to the client from the outset, and really buying into the ambition of the project from the beginning. And, you know, ideally structuring the entire setup of the project to acknowledge that, not least of which being the way that projects are resourced.
Mm-hmm. So my understanding is understanding the brief and talking to those people who are expertise, perhaps on well-being and areas such as, and developing that knowledge as well, I suppose. So in architecture, collaboration shapes not only how the building is delivered, but you also want to think about how it perhaps affects how people experience the space. So, from your perspective, what does good collaboration ultimately have on the effect of how people experience the space? So, for example, how you can see that good collaboration has happened, and you can see that reflect in the project and how a space is experienced.
Overall, I think the appearance should be seamless, that you just feel right. Mm-hmm. We always say that in lighting, but it's all to do with the really blending in, like it's so intentional that you don't see the effort. That's really important. And on a smaller level is about getting those details right, because all comes from little building blocks of getting every detail under control and right. And that means a lot of days and meetings and months of going through all the design ideas and details as a team together to deliver them in that seamless fashion. So there's a lot of background work. When you see something that it's effortless, it's actually required a lot of effort to get there.
How about you, Shay?
Yeah, I mean, you took the word right out of my mouth. I think lighting architecture can make or break a scheme. You can have the most beautiful scheme, poorly lit, and it's a disaster. You could have something probably that's quite mediocre, beautifully lit, and it rescues it. But you will know when it's wrong. You don't necessarily know what feels good about something that gets it right, but for sure you would know if there was something off in terms of the lighting scheme, the quality of light, the rendition of colour, the rendition of material, the rendition of texture, all of the things that bring to life the spaces that we occupy. Lighting is such a fundamental part of the experience.
So we've talked about what good collaboration is, but what about when it doesn't work or what is not working? So what mistakes do you often see when collaboration is, for lack of a better word, perhaps breaking down or just not communicating well? What do you think is the
Right, I'll just look at you.
I think listening is one thing that is the most important. So if it's not, communications can break down if at the moment, or maybe because of the deadlines or something like that, somebody's not listening to each other. But it goes back to being able to make those friends at the beginning, to be able to sort of say, okay, have very frank conversation and reset it. And, there's nothing that can't be resolved as long as it's sort of laid out sort of understood, dissected, and like how do we move forward? And so those things happen, but it's, again, goes back to first principles of how you communicate with each other and sort of understand.
You've mentioned a few times about having that relationship and being able to be direct, but how did you get there in the first place? Like, how did you guys get to that point in your relationships?
I think, we operate in a very mature market. Look, I think, I just want to go back to the other point, actually, about when it goes wrong. And not every project is plain sailing. There are day-to-day problems to solve. What you need is a no-blame culture on the design team. I think we talk a lot about culture, about our company cultures, our organisational cultures, but project culture is a really, really important thing. To create an open, safe space for consultants to have the conversations they need to have, to hold each other accountable, to collectively resolve issues is so important. And I think if organisations collaborating on projects, consultant organisations collaborating on projects, approach it with that mindset, Maida's right, there is nothing that you can't work your way through. And I feel amongst the clients and consultants that TP Bennett and Equation work with regularly, there are generations before us, dare I say, and from a business that's been around for quite a long time, that have paved the way for knowing how to do a project right. The clients also need to be a part of that, to really, really understand the detail, that we need to go into, to unlock the process for us. So, they make decisions when we need them to make decisions. They buy into the project timeline and understand roles and responsibilities. But it is a really, really important thing. I couldn't underestimate the impact that having a really healthy project culture has on good product, good end results.
So, I'm just mindful of time because we've almost got through our first half hour. But just before we open up to our audience, I just want the audience to take some practical takeaways on how they can be good collaborators. So, if someone wants to be a good collaborator tomorrow, what is the first advice you would give them?
Know what you don't know.
Oh, you took something I was potentially going to say. Yeah, it's knowing what others know, and which is what you don't know exactly, and also be open to ideas of other people, and just keep your horizons wide, and learn as much as you can from other people. Sitting in meetings, even not saying anything, is important. So just soak up all the knowledge, and recognize what you don't know.
And take real ownership over it. That's what, again, the best projects, the best collaborations we have are when the people that are working on the project really care about it. And if you get the feeling that that isn't what's happening, you have to have those conversations around team, personality maybe, but you really need a team that cares, because it's hard work delivering some of the projects that we work on. Complex, long hours, challenging programs, challenging budgets, challenging timelines. So you really need to go in it with exactly the right mindset, that you're working together, and keep your eye on the prize.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask our panelists any questions?
Have either of you ever had to manage a personality clash, and how have you gone about that? I mean, I don't mean specifically your personalities clashing, but somebody in your team clashing with potentially the client or something like that.
Or you could come up with a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, I mean, when we were up here talking about like we live in a utopia, which we don't. It happens all of the time. You, as a manager, sometimes you maybe need to be more involved. I think it's rare that something is unfixable or unsolvable, and I think, again, if you can spend the time at the beginning setting everything up right, making sure people know what's expected of them, bonding as a team if you don't know each other, because you don't always have established relationships with people that you're working with. Yes, I mean, the answer is yes, it has happened, but it is I would say it's a rare thing. And it shouldn't necessarily get to that if the team and the project's being managed correctly.
There's nothing that's not resolvable, but I always go back in thinking, you need to try to, when something comes up and you have a difficult conversation, one needs to go back and sit in another person's chair and understand where they might be coming from. And actually that solves half the issue, and you can have another conversation. It's probably very easily resolvable, because it's, you've been there before if it's something political. But design-wise, world is your oyster, so it's the right attitude that it's most important.
Is anyone else?
I'll come all the way over here. Hiya. I was sat with an architect a couple of weeks ago, and he almost joined a Teams call with like 68 people on it, to which I was amazed about. So it's kind of a question on maybe like over collaboration, but the fact that we're always on, we've always got a phone or access to go into these meetings, and you mentioned about time is kind of a constraint because you need time to be creative and think about problems and so on. So how do you go about perhaps setting boundaries to stop always being there for everything, because time to do other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is unfortunately a challenge that we have post the pandemic, where when you had to be in physical places for meetings, you really had to make a call about who needed to be there, who was going to add value. And now there is an open invite to join the call, camera off, not say anything. And look, I don't know exactly which side of the fence I sit on, because our teams are probably learning in a different way than we were, and arguably they might be learning at a quicker pace. But you need to make sure that people, if they are doing that, they are really paying attention, they're focused in. If they're doing technical drawings in the background and half listening and half drawing, I think it's the worst of all worlds. So tough one, but I think we've got to embrace that for what it is, because here to stay, and I do think there is a benefit for young designers, architects to be exposed to a lot more of that interaction, collaboration, and learn how to deal with difficult situations, all types of situations that you can get on a volume that previously, historically, we perhaps didn't.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to learn. I mean, as much as if you're just there with camera off and not bothering, then you just number on a screen. But it's a great opportunity to learn from anybody that it's in type form, because next time they may be in a seat of presenting or discussing, and it's in a past in an in-person meeting you wouldn't have had that or never have that audience, and people would have to get to the point where they actually participate in the meetings. So actually that's a great example of technology potentially offering that training, really. So.
It's a challenge, and I am still a massive fan of face-to-face meeting on projects. I mean, we all work internationally. We know it's not possible on every project, but if we're working on a project here in the UK or even further abroad, I've got many projects in Dublin, and I'll go on the plane for the day just to be there in the room and to really work properly as a team to build the relationships that we know are really important for the future. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, but I see the good in it rather than perhaps the frustration of having too many people on a call.
Is that anyone else? I'm right at the back.
How's the best way for a brand to approach to create products or innovation within the scheme, or have it from infancy and concept into actualisation in one of your ongoing schemes? What's the best approach for new innovative design within the sphere to have implementation into what you're working on? What you're working on within your schemes, within the sphere of if you discover or see from new consideration that you want to adapt, what is the best way for a brand to approach yourselves?
Sorry, brand or
a concept
client?
Or
concept,
a concept or an innovation within, say, lighting or like product, basically. So.
I think we don't look at the innovation for the sake of innovation. I think it comes from understanding where the client is coming from, like their brand, their business needs, their people needs, client needs, and then looking at how our design is developing together with obviously integral part of the interior architecture, for example. And then sort of if we look at the innovation as something that's a response to that, rather than doing it in self-indulgent way. And then it sort of lends itself, you go step by step in terms of, do you need a new product? Do you need a new approach? Do you need a new finishes? How we bounce ideas off each other. It doesn't come as like, okay, this is going to be innovation project. It sort of comes sort of from a need. So.
Requirement, sorry to interrupt, but broader response is a new requirement that you're seeing within your schemes. So like you mentioned neurodiversity and consideration within that, like the adoption of that into what you're specifying.
Are you thinking of what the client responses to for innovation in that project? Sorry.
There's a lack of clarity in what I'm saying. So say the adoption of a new requirement within your spheres or schemes that you're looking for, so the inclusivity of like having lighting that's responsive to new criteria or new acoustic properties that are coming up. What is the best way for somebody to approach you to work on that kind of thing? What would you like to see from brand or product coming forward to
oh, sorry,
more than innovation, same innovation, but more collaboratively, effectively?
I think there's so many products around. in terms of the offering different under different banner. And what we don't like is sort of products which sort of claim this is products that would solve your neurodiversity aspects. This is like ready-made solution. You stick it on a ceiling and it solves the problem. It's not. That's not how the sort of human response to light works, and just generally to the environment. I think what we'd like to see is a good quality of products, and being able to have a good quality of light in terms of the options to mix the colors, the color rendering, the spectral distribution, and really for sort of aspects, as you mentioned, for neurodiversity, in terms of that technical aspect to be catered for, and be able to, from the manufacturer's point of view, to be more flexible about materials and finishes and shapes, and be able to sort of adapt to more easily to the needs of the project, not making it sort of completely starting from scratch, because obviously we try not to sort of make completely custom elements for each project, because that could create risks, undue risks. But if something has to be done, it's got to be done. It's just sort of that collaboration with the manufacturers as well that it's important. So I suppose we were also talking about, there's a lot of collaboration that comes outside of design team with those that sort of produce products and also then construct it. So it's, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. You talk about building relationships. Do you think that that's changed? Is it more valuable to do a face-to-face meeting, or do you think, these, Teams, calls and things like that build those same relationships?
Oh, I absolutely think you've got to properly get to know the people you're working with. So more difficult on Teams. And I think we also have to think beyond the project. I moved here from Australia in the end of the 90s, but didn't intend to stay, but stayed and have worked the majority of my career based here in London, and the majority of that with TP Bennett. And London is one of those places, why would you go anywhere else? So it's got everything. I think that in terms of design opportunity, quantum of projects, quality of projects that would keep young professionals here. And you meet people along the way, like Maida and others and those of you that work in this sector know that you will grow up with people in the industry, and there's a real power of that network. Not only because it will help you collaborate properly and productively and healthily, but it will also be great for your development of project pipeline and your wider network of contacts for clients. And we haven't even spoken about collaboration with clients, because that's at the center of all of this is a healthy project, a fun project, a project that delivers a great result. All happens because the collaboration is there, and it's healthy and productive. So, if you can, get face-to-face for sure.
I like it, and as Maida said, maybe we should get more people back in the pub. So, thank you for joining us today. We'll be hanging around for the next 15 minutes if you want to have a chat, but thank you for coming. And